All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning. Have a lot to get through today. Just me. I'll be speaking today, so I want to share with you some data and then talk about kind of what we're looking at in the week ahead. Tomorrow night, our council meeting, we won't be pushing forward with a stay-at-home order. We're going to figure out how that's withdrawn or voted down based on the data that we presented last week, and I'll share some updated data on that here in a second. Based on what we know today and what we knew at the end of last week, we will be looking at this mid-May to end May peak, and I want to talk about that here this morning because I think there's a perception that when you say, okay, we're not going to do a stay-at-home order in our city. People are like, all right, we're good. We got it. We nailed it. That's not even close. Not even close. Now we're actually in crunch time right now. And I want to share some information that kind of reinforces that and validates that. So where Sioux Falls, South Dakota sits today with the 340 MSAs that are measured across the country, we have the 11th highest cases per capita in any MSA in the country. So we're 11th on the list at about 545 cases per capita. A lot of people say, well, if you take out Smithfield, remove Smithfield, which obviously is a bit of an anomaly in some people's minds, puts us at about between 38 and 39th right here. So still, out of 300 and some MSAs, we're still around the top 10% in MSAs. I share that because that's important. We got Smithfield, non-Smithfield. We still have a high per capita caseload of COVID in our market. We also are talking a lot about this. Based on everything that we've done to date with our social distancing, the messaging, the ordinances, the proclamations, the limiting patrons in restaurants, the closing of parks, we have gained ourselves about a 25% impact on some of our peak numbers. And this band that you see again is what our healthcare systems estimate to be their capacity for COVID cases. And so what we've done is we've bought ourselves obviously a lot of real estate to a point where we're in a safe zone here if nothing changes, if we just continue, if we keep on keeping on. The problem is when you say, well, we aren't going to do a stay-at-home ordinance anymore, and weather's nice, so people should get outside, and those are good messages, but when people start doing that stuff en masse and start to let up on this, we can see this go back up, and then we get into a dangerous spot. And so that is really, really important. In this whole conversation is we have not arrived at anything. We've flattened the curve, but we're bumping up against the ceiling of capacity. So what we've seen over the last 11 days in our market is this. A little bit of a busy chart. I want to unpack it for you here is, and I'm sorry, it looks like I don't know, some of the numbers, some of the numbers didn't translate well, but basically this is the number of active cases. This was April 10 up to April 20 today. So active cases. So you take the total cases, you backed out the recovers. This is where you have with active cases. So you can see over the weekend some recoveries. We obviously had an increase. We had a little bit of a flat line here. And this hospitalization rate, again, the data came through wonky there, so I apologize for that. But we're at around a 4 to 5% hospitalization rate is where we're averaging down here. Very low hospitalization rate. So last 10 days, we've seen a big trend. We're at basically the beginning of that surge, and that information is important as we continue to use this data. This is trailing data to drive our decisions going forward. So we're really starting to move away from what I call the mitigation and preparedness phases to the response phase. We're really entered into the response phase. Our healthcare systems are also starting to move into the response phases. Daily, their number of COVID-related beds and census counts is at a record each day for them. I think there's 50 some right now. between our systems, something like that. And so they'll see that slowly upticking as well. The other thing that we often don't talk about also, but has to be factored into this, I know Nobles County, Minnesota, they have just over the weekend 60-some cases from Friday to today. A lot of those patients, if they're going to need hospitalization, will probably end up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So those are things that we take into account that are happening outside of our MSA as well. If there's another hotspot, if there's another Smithfield at JBS in Worthington, and it gets to those levels, that will really start to drive the numbers and the hospitalizations that we'll see. So one area that we continue to recognize a need for in our community is isolation center, and also a place to take care of our homeless and vulnerable populations. We have a few lodging centers we're working with for some of our homeless populations that need to be isolated, homeless population members, that need to be isolated, so that our homeless shelters can continue to operate effectively and not have massive spread within their facilities. So between the Union Gospel Mission, Bishop Dudley House, there's some good coordination going on there that is addressing that issue. And then tomorrow, we're going to officially be launching a program. I'm going to tease it a little bit today. We'll officially launch tomorrow. We're calling it SOAR. SOAR will stand for Supporting Operations and Resiliency. So what this will really do is we need to continue to look at, if I go back, let's see, I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to go to here. How can we as a community continue to get a little bit more of a buffer down here? Okay, we're probably not going to get this low, but how can we have a little bigger of a, so if the JBS hotspot creeps up or something like that, we have a buffer. Well, we need to look at where the problem areas are. And where the problem mitigation areas are in our community are in large employers and are in large retailers where people are gathering in mass. That's really where the big issues are. And so SOAR will be a program where we will be working with our business community, specifically some of our larger employers, to be giving them a lot of resources, best practices, and tools, including on-site spot checks, to make sure that they are utilizing best practices in slowing the spread of COVID within their own businesses. We will be providing weekly training to these businesses. We will be using our health department to go on site and provide checks to these businesses, some of which may be driven by employees. My office right now has become the hotline for employees who are concerned about their business practices that their employees are doing. If they have those, we'll be able to go on site and take a look and give them recommendations if there is, in fact, some challenges there. We're going to also provide some pretty clear, again, recommendations, not ordinances, but recommendations to businesses regarding temperature checks for all employees when they come to a business, when they leave a business, when visitors come and leave a business. Visually screening, how do you visually screen shoppers in a business? And do that in a non-discriminatory fashion. The CDC over the weekend released about a 4-page document just for grocers on things that they need to be doing, from the way they're handling carts to checkouts to handling merchandise to what's happened in the loading dock, where some of it's spreading from the loading dock. We want to provide those services to really our big box retailers, our call centers, and those are two of the main areas where we're seeing a lot of activity and a need for us to be more involved. So the key with this, though, the reason we're calling this SOAR and we're using the term resiliency, is the quicker businesses can adapt their business practices, take the spread of COVID seriously, and slow the spread in their business, the quicker they will be back to normal. The quicker their customers will appreciate those steps, the quicker their employees, the more satisfied their employees will be from a job satisfaction standpoint. I know of some employees who are leaving companies because they don't feel safe anymore. They're quitting. They're going someplace else. So from an employee retention standpoint and a resiliency and bounce back perspective, businesses who take COVID mitigation seriously now are going to be better poised to reopen and reopen quickly when we start to get on the downside of that curve. So look for a press release on that tomorrow, where we'll be working with hopefully our chamber and our development foundation and some other partners in our community on working with those businesses. Lastly, I also want to talk a little bit about physical and mental health right now. This is starting to take a toll on people, all right? People are frustrated. They want to be back to normal. The national landscape has shown you that there's now a sentiment in some cities and states across the country where people have said, I'm done. I've had it. Let's go. Let's get back over it. It's not really how it works. And especially that's not how it works in Sioux Falls when we're just kind of on the beginning of this. And so there are certain things, though, that we can continue to do to take care of ourselves. And one is physical health, all right? Walking, running, getting outside, staying away from people, but getting fresh air. That's really, really important. You can't overstate the importance of that. So I launched a challenge today to get people to consider walking or running 100 miles over the next 100 days. Walk around your neighborhood, walk down a gravel road, walk on our bike trails. When you meet someone, get out on the grass, social distance, converge after, get out. The more we also encourage people to get out and be active, the less time they'll have to go to Lowe's and Menards and Home Depots and other places where they're going because they're quite honestly bored right now. If you're bored, I need you to get out and walk and run. That's what I really would like to see right now. CDC is encouraging that. It's safe. That's a safe activity that we can all do right now during this time. So I'd ask that people consider doing that. Positivity is not banned. Okay? Fitness is not banned. Walking is not banned. Running is not banned. Okay? Those are things that we can continue to do in our city to stay healthy, keep our minds clear, keep our heads clear as we move forward. So love to take any questions you may have today on any of these programs we talked about, anything going on with our council this week, or any other topics. All right.
I was just going to say, in this graph alone, we are seeing kind of the curve. And I know last week, I think it was last Monday, those numbers ended up, and you actually called it a spike. What you saw was a spike. Now that it's been a week, and things have do you think things have kind of leveled off at this point?
Yeah, the question is this a level off? This is too soon to say. This is 3 days worth of data. I think if you extend this back even further to mid-March, this looks a lot more of like a spike than just a curve. But we'll see. I think the key with this, remember, we were testing a ton of Smithfield employees during this time. And we continue to test a ton of Smithfield employees. Our numbers today that we'll release, we have single-digit Smithfield cases today in the numbers that will be released at noon. First time since I don't know when. It's been probably 10 days since we've been in the single digits of Smithfield employees. So the Smithfield issue is on the downslope. Now we're just seeing community spread in all the other areas and other businesses and other organizations. So we've moved past Smithfield, and now we're into widespread community spread in other areas. So that's what we're dealing with now.
And when you're kind of pressing the pause button saying, hey, we're only in the beginning of this with the previous chart, just kind of elaborate on that, and if you can prepare people for what they can expect probably over the course of the next month. And you said before the shelter in place is being considered.
Yeah, the challenge right now is that we're really about a month in to this process. We're only about a month in. I know it feels like we have been talking COVID and dealing with COVID for years. We're about a month in. The next month is going to be much more challenging than the previous month. Okay? So I need to be very candid and clear on that we're just beginning, okay, this process. And so over the course of May and into June, okay, the efforts you've all done so well to date, you're going to have to double down on those, right? You're going to have to double down on the social distancing efforts and the mitigation efforts that you've been doing so well. It's really, really key. There's a finish line, but it's still a long ways away. And we still can't see it. So we're just running. We're running hard right now, and we're doing our best. People have to not let up right now.
Can you kind of talk about how the healthcare systems in Sioux Falls are working with, like, across the border in Minnesota and anticipating maybe sharing some beds?
The question was about how the healthcare systems are working with across the border, places like Worthington, for instance. And, I really can't speak to that, how they're allocating resources, between each other, amongst each other. While Smithfield was an Avera contract, I believe JBS in Worthington is a Sanford contract. So they have their own issue now that they're dealing with within JBS. And so I know they're spending a lot of time and resources over in Worthington right now. There'd be a question for Sanford. They're concerned about it. They should be. But as we've seen with our hospitalization rates, with the Smithfield population, it's a healthy population. There's been low hospitalization rates among Smithfield. I'm hoping that same thing holds true for potentially what's happening in Worthington.
Will these slides be available to our news directors?
We'll make the slides available, you bet. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rick.